In this week leading up to Sunday's game against the Dallas Cowboys, the Philadelphia Eagles made multiple roster moves. So coming up on today's show, we're going to summarize all of those moves for you and explain what they mean for Howie Roseman and Philadelphia. And speaking of Sunday's game against the Dallas Cowboys, we'll be doing a watch party for it, so make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hope to see you all there. And then at the back end of the show, we'll be taking some of your questions from the smartest fans in football. So roster move number one, which came as a little bit of a surprise on Wednesday, Philadelphia Eagles releasing Christian Ellis. If he comes back to the practice squad, won't be surprised at all. This was somewhat surprising given how much he played over the last couple of games just because the Eagles were so thin at that linebacker spot. He came in to replace Zach Cunningham when Cunningham went out in the second quarter with his hamstring injury against Buffalo. Then he got the start against San Francisco. And San Francisco started licking their chops during their game planning, understanding that they could target Nicholas Morrow as well as Christian Ellis. And they did, and they went back to the well time and time and time again. And it's surprising because the Eagles here played Christian Ellis a lot, who performed well throughout the preseason. But also, the Philadelphia Eagles kept UDFA linebacker out of Michigan State, Ben Van Sumeren, over Christian Ellis. Both of these players, steady special teams contributors, and because of that, won't be surprised if Ellis makes his way back either this week or he ends up going to the Eagles in training camp next year. But Ellis, not good at all over the last two games. Why did the Eagles do this, though? Philadelphia had to open up a roster spot for Shaq Leonard. And Philadelphia might not be done. There's rumored interest in Ndamukong Suh, rumored interest in Zack Herz, who wants to go to a Super Bowl contender, and Philadelphia and Howie Roseman always aggressive in trying to upgrade that roster. So they make the Shaq Leonard signing official, and they release Christian Ellis. Now, a lot of you might be asking, well, Chase, why didn't the Eagles release Nicholas Morrow? He was the worst defender against San Francisco. He couldn't tackle. He couldn't cover. He was bad. Well, they basically only have one Mike linebacker on the team right now. So if they were to release him and somebody goes down, who do you play at Mike linebacker? So that's why Philadelphia is holding on to Nicholas Morrow, who's been good against the run, good as a blitzer, but bad against the pass. Another Eagles roster move this week, Philadelphia signing Eagles legend Greg Ward to the practice squad. The Eagles, a week after signing Cam Sims, who played his college football at Alabama alongside Jalen Hurts, they released him. So Greg Ward and his locker was never emptied at the NovaCare complex. His jersey and nameplate was never taken off. And what Greg Ward always gives this team, a player who can contribute on special teams as a kick returner or punt returner, and a solid backup wide receiver who's been gritty throughout his entire NFL career after transitioning to wide receiver after having a storied career at the University of Houston playing quarterback. Justin Evans, the free agent acquisition this offseason at safety, is going to stay on IR. So this opens up potentially another roster spot for Philadelphia. His practice window was closed. 21 days to activate and elevate him to the active roster. So he's going to stay on IR for the rest of the year with the knee injury, and he will be lost for the rest of the year. What this means is that the Eagles here only have three safeties on their roster. Reed Blankenship, who is a leading vote getter at safety for the Pro Bowl alongside Jason Kelce, and as well as Sidney Brown and Kevin Byard. So if an injury happens there, this Eagles secondary, which has had no consistency as far as players being available, might have to go on the safety market to bring another player in. And that crop even more thin now after Logan Ryan this week signed with the rival San Francisco 49ers. Good news on the injury front for Philadelphia is that Dallas Goedert, a full participant this week, so Dallas will return against Dallas, and the Eagles have certainly missed him. And I think that their run game has been impacted, and their pass game has obviously regressed. So too is Jalen Hurts' completion percentage. We talked about this a couple of times this week, but it really is drastic, noticeable, how bad and how much of a drop-off there's been with Hurts' completion percentage. Miami, Washington, Dallas, the three games before Goddard's injury, Hurts was in about the mid-70s for his completion percentage. And then in the 3 games without Dallas Goedert, who never went on IR, against Kansas City, Buffalo, and against San Francisco, the completion percentage has been bad. And in 2 of those games, under 60%. It is Dallas hate week. And maybe we never see eye to eye as far as how we see the game of football, although I believe that we can bring great coverage, and we do bring great coverage to the airwaves on YouTube. But one thing we can agree on, F the Cowboys every single day, year round. So type that in the chat. We'll take your questions on the other side to hear from a lot of our loyal subscribers. But First Eagles Now is sponsored by Prize Picks. $100 deposit match at prizepicks.com/CLNS and use the code CLNS. Daily fantasy sports made easy. You pick 2+ players. You choose more or less on their projected stat lines, and you have the opportunity to win real money. Meek Mill is a big Prize Picks guy. Your boy Chase, right here, big Prize Picks guy. So too is producer Chip. And here are Chip's winning picks. A.J. Brown against the Cowboys, more than 78.5 receiving yards. Hassan Reddick, more than 0.75 sacks, meaning he only needs 1. Jake Elliott, let's go 2 field goals made for him. So we'll go more than 1.5 made. And then C.D. Lamb, more than 89.5 receiving yards. What's cool is that you can combine your NFL and NBA picks, and you can make picks all across the board for all types of sports. PrizePicks.com/CLNS. Get in on the action right now. John 610 fan, will the Eagles tackle better? Hopefully. Philadelphia is one of the best tackling teams in the NFL going into that game against the Niners, and the Niners were the best yards after completion team in the NFL. San Francisco won that battle, and they won it by a very wide margin, as Philadelphia just had a lot of lapses and sometimes looked disinterested in making tackles. I think a big reason for that, little beat down, a little bit tired. They had 3 games in 13 days. 2 of those games going up against teams, or one of those games, or 2 of those. So the Chiefs of note were coming out of the bye week like Philadelphia, so they didn't have the rest advantage. You had Buffalo sandwiched in between that and the Niners game. And then the Niners were coming off a week and a half of rest because they played on Thanksgiving. And then going into Sunday, Dallas played last Thursday. So they had the rest advantage as well. But 3 games in 13 days on a gauntlet of a stretch against the Chiefs, Bills, and Niners is not easy to handle. And because of that, I thought the Eagles, they played a little bit soft. Mike Jr., I think the Eagles should experiment with Nolan Smith more at the linebacker spot more than the edge. So the Eagles did a little bit of this in the preseason, and Nolan Smith was primarily an edge rusher at Georgia, but at times he did drop back in coverage. That is not his forte at all, but he is a little bit capable. And I guess the thought is, and I like it, Mike, is that you can use Nolan Smith in a little bit of a hybrid Swiss Army knife type of role. He can fake as a stand-up edge rusher and drop back in coverage, and he's athletic and fast enough to hopefully have that range. The instincts might not be there because he hasn't done it a lot, or you can just have him lined up as a stand-up edge rusher where he can rush the passer. And those are the types of wrinkles that I want to see Sean Desai implement a little bit going up against Dallas, especially with how well Dallas was able to play against this Eagles defense in Week 9. Dro, $5 super chat. Desai, stop with the soft coverage. Short passes are killing us. Brian Johnson, run the damn ball. Goedert coming back will help us immensely. Go Birds, F Dallas. Go Birds and F Dallas, of course. That is the motto. For Sean Desai, yeah, I don't love the soft coverage, but when he did blitz Brock Purdy, Purdy was like 10 of 11 when the Eagles sent 5 or more. So at that point, it's like, what are we going to do? Really, the linebacking play has to be a little bit better. The pass rush has to be able to get home, and the secondary has to play better. As for the Eagles running the football a little bit more, a lot of people are outraged by the Eagles' lack of running, but Philadelphia's actually run the ball a lot. They just haven't been successful in running the ball this year. 2 fans outside the Novacare complex on Wednesday held up a sign, run the ball more. Jalen Hurts' injury has hurt the running game because teams aren't respecting the RPO because Hurts isn't running it as much. The Eagles have 200 yards less in yards before contact this year as compared to last year. So the offensive line just isn't winning like they were. But the Eagles are the 5th most run-heavy team, and that's with Hertz not running as much. And DeAndre Swift is 9th in the NFL in carries. It's all about just being better with the run. That's what it comes down to. Davis, $5 super chat. Eagles are nowhere to be found after their beatdown against the Cowgirls. They showed up and bent the knee after we laid that whoop-ass on them. I don't think there's been an Eagles fan out there that has disagreed with that. Everything that I've seen, Eagles fans are owning up to the fact that their football team got utterly dominated by San Francisco. I mean, look, the game didn't lie. You go up 6-0, and from that point, you get outscored 42-13. You didn't score a touchdown until the third quarter. San Francisco had 6 straight drives with touchdowns. It's the first time the Eagles have allowed that to happen in nearly 60 years. So yes, Eagles got crushed. It was a humble defeat. David Oden, do you think that we may have an opportunity to get Zack Herz back, and your thoughts? Yeah, we've talked about this here on the show a lot, David. The Eagles have rumored to be interested in Herz. I would imagine that they've already reached out. They have that level of contact there. Zack Herz played such great football for this team from 2013 to 2021. He is second all-time in franchise history in receptions, 10 behind tying Harold Carmichael. He was a Super Bowl icon during that 2017 run. I think that he could be another offensive weapon for Jalen Hurts. He does such a good job at finding the soft spot of the defense, and the underneath routes are something that gives Jalen Hurts an easy read. But if you're Zack Herz, do you want to go to Philadelphia where you're not sure how much you're going to play, when you could go to Kansas City and play with Mahomes? They have no weapons. Or you could go to Baltimore and maybe be their starting tight end for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. The chat, how come we don't use Penny more with DeAndre Swift? It's weird. And it's weird because Rashad Penny has had a lot of success in his NFL career, but the Eagles might know something that we don't know. And maybe that's why it's not weird, if you want to fight back on me with that. But I thought going into this year, you could use Rashad Penny as a physical back. Eagles haven't used him at all. Could he be the answer? Because this Eagles offensive line is not winning right now. Do you just need somebody who's going to put their head down, keep the feet churning, and bulldoze cats? Because that's what Penny can do. Now, he has been injured so much in his NFL career. And maybe the Eagles look at that and they're like, man, he's banged up. This doesn't have the same juice. But at least let us see if he has the juice, right? Because this Eagles rushing offense has not been good the last few weeks. Finesse to Don. I feel like if we run the ball successfully more on first and second down, it'll open up more opportunities for RPO and 21 personnel on third down. I hear you, and it sounds good, but the RPO, teams aren't respecting it because Jalen Hurts isn't pulling the ball down to run it. When the Eagles run it with Hurts, he's really running in between the tackles on that design quarterback draw, and really they saved that play for the red zone. And the issue is that the Eagles are not winning right now when they're trying to run the football. So they're not making, if they run on first and second down, second and third down manageable. And that's why they're passing it so much. Now, 21 personnel, that's why you would bring in Zack Herz, so that you can run more of those 2 tight end sets. Goedert can be a blocker. He can fake as a blocker, run a route. He could be a route runner. And then Ertz can be a little bit of a receiver too, in addition to having DeVonta Smith, A.J. Brown on the field. And then you're not having to play a Julio Jones as well as an Olamide Zaccheaus or a Quez Watkins. Would you rather sit them and have Zack Herz? That's a part of the conversation that I imagine Howie Roseman, this front office, and this coaching staff is having. Brazzy Smacks. What else can we do to improve this team so that we can win the Super Bowl? Do the coordinators need a fresh set of ideas on each side to be more creative? You know, I know that the Eagles' defensive numbers have been bad, and I highlighted that this week a lot, and they have to be better. And if they don't improve on some of those defensive numbers, the Eagles are going to get ousted early, and they're not going to make it back to the Super Bowl. But Sean Desai has made some really good adjustments. He also can't really control the linebacking play just being awful. So I think that Brian Johnson and Sean Desai have ability as coordinators, but think about what Jonathan Gannon's been able to do with Arizona. Think about what Shane Steichen's done with Indianapolis. Indianapolis has a chance to make the playoffs with Gardner Minshew as their starter when this was supposed to be a rebuilding year. So I don't think a lot of people realized how good of a coordinator Shane Steichen was, who helped Jalen Hurts be runner-up for MVP and developed him, and helped Justin Herbert with the Chargers set a bunch of records. And then Jonathan Gannon, I think that Sean Desai is a lot better than Jonathan Gannon, but he was at least more experienced as compared to Sean Desai, who is only in his second year of calling defensive plays. Callie Green, Sidney Brown worked at sub linebacker in the first quarter, then they went away from it. Why is personnel so hard? They let Morrow get cooked for 175. Here's the issue, though, and I agree with at least trying to have Sidney Brown as that sub linebacker in those nickel packages, playing a little slot nickel corner. He's struggled as a slot nickel corner as well. I like his athleticism. I like his speed. I like that you can have him around the box. I don't love him in coverage right now. When he plays safety, I feel as though his vision is a lot free and the sight line is just easier because you're away from the ball. So you can see things and have time to react. Whereas if you're closer to the line of scrimmage, everything's condensed. There's so much movement. Kyle Shanahan often cooks with the pre-snap movement, which James Bradbury said caused the Eagles a lot of fits, just like it did in the Super Bowl on those plays around the goal line to Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore. That's another thing that the Eagles have to get better at, especially going up against a Dallas team that, with Mike McCarthy as the play caller, has implemented a lot more pre-snap motion. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you subscribe, you can ask questions and be a part of the show, a show that is seen by millions of people every single month. It's youtube.com/EaglesNow, or even easier for you, just hit that sub button.